Good evening. My name is Brian Albright, and we're here to interview Meghan DeGolyer about her experience in Japan. So Meghan, tell us a little bit about this exchange.
Well, I first became interested in this exchange when I saw a form in a Future Homemakers of American magazine about, it must have been 2 Decembers ago. And it had an application to try out for a scholarship through Kikkoman and Future Homemakers of America. So I sent in the little blank that it had with it, and I received tons of forms. And I proceeded to fill them out, and luckily I was chosen. I was one of the 18 people chosen to travel to Japan this summer. Out of the, I think there was 150 people that tried out.
Oh. How long did you have to travel?
Well, to get to Japan, it took about 19 hours. It's a little bit longer coming back. It took me 21 hours coming back. I don't think, it was just the winds, and I think they were a little bit longer of layovers on the way back.
Before you left, did you have any orientation to the language and customs of Japan?
The trip that I took was through Youth for Understanding. The money that was needed for the trip was paid for by Kikkoman and by FHA. But Youth for Understanding had a orientation where we went to Washington State for 3 days and stayed at University of Washington. And we had little kumis, which are little groups. And there are about 10 people in each kumi. There are about 150 kids there. And we all had to walk around in our little kumis, and we had Japanese language lessons, and we had writing lessons, and we studied some Japanese dance, which is kind of funny, seeing all these kids trying to dance and not doing too well at it.
When you arrived, what city did you stay in?
I first arrived in Tokyo. I arrived at Narita Airport, which is a very large airport. And that's right outside of Tokyo. It took about, it must have taken about 2 hours to get to Tokyo. And from there I went to my hometown, which is called Aneshi, which is, it's supposed to be small town living, but it's about twice the size of Rochester. So it depends on what your perspectives are, I guess.
Describe your host family a little bit.
Well, the family I stayed with, I had 2 daughters in it, and I had a mother and a father, of course. And my host mother worked in a brokerage firm in downtown Tokyo, and my father was a construction worker. And my 2 sisters were both 17. The older one was Michiko. She was a student. She was studying to get into college. And the younger one is Yukiko. She was in high school, and she's now in Michigan. She's an exchange student for the year.
Did you interact with the sons and daughters of your host family often?
Well, I was with Yukiko quite often because she was more my age and she wasn't studying for school. Michiko was always studying. She had college exams in November, but when I was there in June, she was studying every day and all night. She never left her room. She'd wake up at 6:30 and go to bed about 11:30 and came down for meals, and that was about it. And Yukiko and I did a lot of traveling, though. We'd ride our bikes into town, and we went and visited different places together.
How often did you go to school?
I went to school just for a week because when I got there it was nearly exam time and the students were really cramming for exams, so they didn't really want me there that long. But for the week I was there, I went to school every day of the week except for Sunday. You had half days on Saturdays, which is a little bit different, especially since that was the 4th of July, so I really didn't want to go to school. And it took me, to get to school I'd have to get up about 6:45, and I'd have to walk to the train, which is about a 15-minute walk. Sometimes I got to use a bike. It depended on who had the bike that morning. And then I took a train for about 10 minutes, and then I took a bus for another 10 minutes, and I walked for another 15 minutes, and I got to school.
Did you have any difficulty in adjusting to Japanese food?
No, not at all. It wasn't very hard. At first, the first day I got there, it was sort of strange having rice for breakfast. We had rice 3 times a day. So that was a little bit different. But I tried everything, and usually I didn't know what it was till after I'd eaten it, so I guess you couldn't say I had too much of a difficulty.
What holidays happened while you were there?
Oh, let's see. There were some festivals while we were there. There were no really big holidays. There were some festivals. And in the festivals, in the evening, people would get dressed up in outfits like this. This is yukata. And they'd go out and dance in the streets like, you know how we have our parades. Well, different corporations would sponsor a group of their employees to go out and do dances, and they'd practice for weeks and get up and in the evening and go out and dance. And this would last like 3 days, and people would always be out dancing and having a good time. And they'd have these festivals in each little town, so I got to see a few of them. And we went to some hanabi shows, which is fireworks. Fireworks are really popular when I was there. I didn't think I'd get to see any for the 4th of July, but I saw a lot more than you would usually in the States.
You mentioned your outfit, it was a yukata. Is that typical clothing?
But people don't really wear yukatas and kimonos. So kimono is like a yukata, only they're made out of a heavier material, most likely silk. But people don't generally wear these, except for the very old women. Sometimes you see them walking around in them. And like for festivals, you sometimes see people wearing them. But otherwise, they don't wear them that often. Just typical clothes like an American would wear are more common.
Can you describe the weather? How does it compare to, say, Wyoming County?
Well, the weather while I was there was very hot. It was usually in the high 90s, and it felt like about 99% humidity every day. So you wore very light clothing, cotton clothing, and you just hoped everywhere you went had an air conditioner. In my house, every room had an air conditioner except mine because my father had run into the air conditioner with a truck. So I sort of had tough nights trying to sleep. But sometimes you were lucky. There was one typhoon when I was there, and that brought some cooler weather. So we were glad. I was glad for that. Nobody else seemed to be glad for that. We also had a few earthquakes when I was there too. They were kind of interesting, but
something you never experience here.
I guess in some parts of Japan they're supposed to have up to 30 earthquakes a day, but you can't really feel them. I don't know, not where I was.
So did many people that you interacted with every day speak English, or?
Well, students in Japan are supposed to study about 6 years of English, but most of it is written and not speaking, so most people know a little English. If they'll walk up to you on the street because they know you're a foreigner, you really stand out, and they go, "Oh, hello, how are you?" And then a lot of little kids would do that, and they'd run away because they'd be scared to see what you do next. And some people would speak English. I was lucky to live right next to a university. There's ICU, it's International Christian University. And students there were American and Japanese, so there are a lot of people that spoke American. I was lucky to be able to meet them.
I guess that's it.
You want me to tell you a little bit more about school?
Sure.
Okay. Why don't you ask me to tell you more about school?
Okay. Can you tell us any more about your school?
The school I went to was an all-girls school. Mostly kids go to either all girls or all boys. And it was a Catholic school, which is sort of unusual. I went to a different school than what my sisters went to. They went to one that was about an hour away. Mine was closer because they accept American students. And at this school, everyone had to wear uniforms. And
did that include you?
Yeah, well, I didn't have to. There were some different exchange students that were there for the whole year, and they had to wear them. And one of them was a little large, and they had trouble finding a uniform that would fit her because all the girls in the school were very small, and just even a typical sized American is harder to fit. And at the school, let's see, we had, I'm trying to think, I think 7 classes a day, and they each lasted an hour. And we had an hour for lunch, which was nice. And then we had 10-minute breaks between classes, which is different than the 4 minutes we have here. And at school, girls aren't allowed to wear makeup, and they can't curl their hair or have permanents or anything. And you can't hold down a job, because if they find out you have a job, they might throw you out of school. So it's a little bit stricter. And they have, like on special days during the week, like on Thursdays at my school, they had special classes. Like in the morning, you go to your regular classes. But in the afternoon, each girl would have a special class she'd go to. Like I had to go to tea ceremony, and some girls went to French cooking, and some went to sewing. It was just whatever you wanted to do.
I noticed you had some articles over here. Could you show us some of them?
Sure. Okay. Let's see. Okay, these are some of the tea ceremony things that I used when I was in Japan. This is a tea bowl that would be used, that you'd make the tea in, and then it would be drunk from this, like in this sort of manner. Let's see. I also have something else that's used for tea making. This is a whisk that you'd use in the bowl, you'd beat the tea in a certain manner. The tea that you use is green tea, of course, and it's powdered, so you take hot water and you have to beat it in a certain manner because tea ceremony is very ritualistic and you have to beat things in a certain manner. When you pick up your bowl, you have to turn it a certain number of times around before you can drink out of it, and that sort of thing. This is a tea ceremony kit, and a lot of young girls in Japan had these. It depended on whether you had to take lessons or not. Inside of the kit, in my kit anyways, most kits have this stuff. This is a cloth that you would use to pick up the tea bowl with. You hold the tea bowl like this and drink from it. A lot of kits have little fans. This is one that was given to me. And these can be used in ceremonies depending on which ceremony you go to. Because there's about 5 different types of ceremonies. There are some that are very formal and some that aren't, you know. One that I went to, you had to crawl in through a hole in the through the door, like instead of a door they had a little hole that you crawled in through. And you had to wash your hands outside before you went in. You had to change your shoes 2 or 3 times. And this is like a little, I call it a sword, but it's like a cutting instrument that you'd use to cut open a pastry. That you're given pastries when you're making tea. And the people that aren't making the tea have to eat the pastries. And they're made out of sweetened bean paste, and they're made to look very pretty. And you cut them with this, and you eat it. You sort of pick it up with your little stabber and pick up the bean paste. And inside of this, these are the little claws that you would use to pick up your bean paste with. Just very little thin layers of paper that you would pick up your bean paste with. Tea ceremonies are very interesting to go to. I went to about 5 lessons, and each one was different. In each one, you might say something different or do something different, depending on just who the teacher is. Let's see, what else do I have? I have some Japanese money with me. You want to see that?
Sure.
Okay. I had this money in a little purse. This is a purse that was given to me. And this would be worn inside of your obi, which holds your yukata on. And you put it in here. This is what the women would use if they were wearing a yukata. And if you need your money, you just pull it out and open it up. And the little clasp is a frog, and the frog is sort of a good luck, I guess. This is some of the paper money in Japan. This is a 1,000 yen. And if you look closely at the little circle, if you hold it up to light, you can sort of see a man in the little circle. It's the man that's on the front. Same little guy. Let's see, 1,000 yen when I was there was worth about $13, but since the exchange rate has fluctuated so much, it's sort of difficult to know. I think it's about 131 yen to the dollar now. This is 100 yen, and you could use this on train fares. If you were riding the train, you'd use these, or if you wanted to get a soft drink, you use 100 yen. 500 yen, you'd also use that if you're riding a train or something like that. You know, very similar uses. This is a 10 yen. And this is just another train coin if you wanted it. This is not worth very much. And this is a 50 yen with a little hole through it. And finally there's a 1 yen, which hardly weighs anything at all. It's a very light coin, as you can see. Let's see, what else do we have? I brought a fan. This would be a fan that would be worn in the back of a yukata. You stick it, there's a bow in back of yukata, and you put it back there, and if you were hot, you'd take it out and fan yourself. You'd see little old ladies all the time be walking around with this type of fan or the folding type of fan. They'd always be going around fanning themselves and taking out handkerchiefs and rubbing their faces. And let's see. There's some utensils that you'd use for dining. This is a teacup. And there's a certain way you're supposed to hold this. The first time that I had tea, I held my cup the wrong way. If you're a female, you hold your cup like this, and you drink like this. But if you're male, you can hold it with one hand. We had tea quite often, too. I'd say like 3 to 4 times a day, and some days we'd have it up to 7 times a day. So, all depended on, how thirsty you were. I brought her along a book about sushi. Do you know what sushi is?
Raw fish, right?
Well, it depends. Sashimi is raw fish. Sushi can be sometimes raw fish, but it doesn't always have to. And there's some examples of sushi inside of it. Sushi is pretty good, actually. One time my host mother brought me to a sushi bar. And they're very different than what you consider normal restaurants. You go inside, and there's a little, like, assembly belt going around these people that are making these patties of rice, and then they'd put a type of raw fish on it. And then they'd put this on a plate, and they'd put it on the assembly belt, and you sat outside of the assembly belt and grabbed off whatever you wanted and ate it with your chopsticks. And when you're finished eating it, you put the plate down next to you, and after you're all finished eating, you could have as much as you wanted. You just pick up the plates, bring them to the cash register, and they count up the number of plates that you had and charge you for it. So it's pretty much of a trust system, you know.
Did you always use chopsticks? Were there any?
A lot of times when I visit different people's houses, they'd be afraid that I didn't know how to use them, and they'd set out silverware for me. But when they see I could use chopsticks, they're always amazed. When I first got there, the first night, it was about 11 o'clock when I got there, and there's a 14-hour time difference, and I hadn't slept at all on the way over, so I was sort of in comatose state. And my family's gets out the chopsticks and says, "Oh, let's use the chopsticks." Yeah. And at first I was kind of shaky with them, but if you want to eat, you learn to use them.
Do you have any with you?
Yes, I think so. I think I have to get up to get them though. Let's see. Here's some chopsticks. These are very simple chopsticks. These are cheapies. And you just, you pick up whatever you want with it. Like, it's been a while since I've used them, you can see. And this would be a chopstick rest. Not all houses use these, but some do. And when you're done with your chopsticks, you set your chopsticks on the rest.
I see.
Let's see, what else do I have? This is an obento. This is what little kids would carry to school. Big kids would carry this to school. And you put your lunch inside of it. It's a very little container. But it's amazing how much you could fit inside of these. Like, most of the time, kids would have cold rice and some kind of meat, maybe some fruit, depending on what you happen to have around the house, as it often does in America.
Similar to Tupperware.
Yes. And these were always wrapped up in these bright little handkerchiefs. It was really beautiful, but I could never learn to do that.
Are these chopsticks right here on top?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Then these were like notebooks that you would have in Japan if you were going to school. Little younger girls like to use these, I think. And they have little pictures all over all the pages, so they're different than what we would use. Is there something else I can tell you about? Would you like to know something else?
I don't think so. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I can tell you a little bit about some, let's see. Would you like to know some more about some customs? I'm trying to think of some.
Were there any special places that you visited?
With my family, both my family and my friends, I visited Fujisan, Mount Fuji, which most people know about. It's a very tall volcanic mountain in Japan. And my sister and some friends of ours, we went and climbed the mountain, well, tried to climb it one day. We'd been visiting the beach. We were visiting some people that lived at the beach in a beautiful home. And we took a bus to Fuji, and we didn't have any climbing clothes. We had our beach wear and our flip-flops. So it looked kind of funny climbing this mountain through these clouds because you couldn't see because all the clouds were around it. It was so high up.
Oh.
So you're just walking through this fog. And let's see, we visited the beach, like I said, and that was very pretty. And we visited Yokohama, which is below Tokyo. And in Yokohama, I visited Chinatown, which is kind of interesting. It's very different than Japan. Even the smells are different and the foods are different. And let's see, we visited Takaosan, which is another mountain. And Takao, there are supposed to be spirits living in Takao. It's not an extremely tall mountain. We climbed the whole thing. And there's temples along the way they're supposed to stop at. And they have very tall pine trees on Takao. And in these pine trees are supposed to live these creatures called tengus. And tengus have these really long noses, and they're sort of red-faced. And they wear special shoes. Most shoes in Japan no, people don't usually wear these anymore, but they used to wear shoes that were built like this. They're wooden, and they had two prongs coming down like this on them. But the Tengu only has one prong on his shoe. And he jumps out of the trees at people, I guess. I never saw one.
Before you have mentioned that you visited Kikkoman Sauceworks, or the...
Oh, because Kikkoman sponsored my scholarship. We visited the soy sauce industries, which are soy sauce is made by Kikkoman. It's a seasoning that's used very often in Japan. And we visited both the modern plant and the plant that's used to make special soy sauce. The modern plant was very large, and they had huge vats of where they'd keep beans that were fermenting, and it was not the loveliest looking thing to look at, but it was very interesting to see. And we visited a special place that was the Imperial soy sauce maker's place, and that was very traditional looking. And there they made soy sauce only for the emperor, and he was the only one that could use this soy sauce.
Could you show us where you lived on the map?
Sure. Let's see if I can get up here. This is a map of Tokyo and surrounding areas, and let's see. It's kind of hard to see it, but this is where I lived in Koganeshi, and downtown Tokyo is right here. Quite often we'd go. My sister's school is right around here in Tokyo. We visited here. This is where Takaosan was that I was telling you about, that mountain. We went down to this place, Kanagawa Prefecture, sometimes. They had a very lovely nature preserve there.
How far did you say it was from your home to Tokyo?
For my sisters to get to school, it took about an hour. It just depended where you're going, because everywhere it seemed like there was city. So even where I lived, small town was city to me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think where else were there some places. But my family took me all over Tokyo and the surrounding area. As long as I'm up, I can show you the rest of my yukata. This is the yukata itself. This is the obi. And on the back, the obi is generally tied with a bow, or it can be tied in a different manner. And yeah, and the fan would be stuck in the back if you were walking around. Not quite that high up. Let's see, what else would you like to know?
Nothing.
I can tell you a little bit about the Japanese characters because they're very different from American language. American alphabet, which is called Romaji, is very different because in Japan they have three alphabets. There's katakana, hiragana, and kanji. And katakana has about 30 syllables, and that's used for like American words that wouldn't generally translate into Japanese. Hiragana has 30 sounds in it. I'm not sure exactly what that's used for. It looks very decorative, so I assume it's used for like signs, that sort of thing. And kanji has over 6,000 syllables in a normal newspaper, so that's not even all the syllables, but that would be your normal vocabulary. So I didn't get too far in learning it. I could do about my name and my family's name, read a few more symbols, that sort of thing. Anything else you'd like to know?
I can't think of anything.
Let's see, I'll tell you a little bit more about the food.
Okay.
At my house, like I said before, we had rice about 4 times a day. We also had miso soup quite often. I don't know if everyone in Japan has miso soup a lot, but we had it quite often. And miso soup is made out of fermented bean paste, and it has, sometimes it has shellfish in it, or, what else do we have in it? Vegetables. It all depends on who's making it. And we also had tea quite often. Depending on where we went, we had many different kinds of food. Like we had the sushi sometimes. Quite often we had things like, I'm trying to think. We had shabu shabu, which is a type of meat. You chop it very thinly. You can use pork, you can use beef. And then you'd dip this meat into a boiling pot of water that has vegetables in it, sort of like broth. And you'd cook the meat very quickly, and you'd pull it out with your chopsticks and eat it. It's expensive, but it tastes good. And we had, let's see, chicken shish kebabs. Yakitori, they were called. And those are quite common. They tasted good. You'd always see vendors selling them on the side of the road. They were good. You didn't really have a lot of meat, though. Usually you just had seafood because Japan is all surrounded by water. You can't go very far anywhere in Japan before you run into water. So seafood is plentiful and easy to get, and you have it a lot. And vegetables are very expensive, fruits and vegetables. For example, like a watermelon this size would cost $70 in American money. So you didn't have that sort of thing very often. We also had desserts sometimes. They were made out of beans. Beans are a very popular substance. Fermented beans and bean paste, sweet bean paste.
Did you find it hard to transfer from American food to Japanese food?
You mean when I went over there?
Yeah, when you...
Oh, not at all. It was, just if you had to eat it, so you might as well, Something else we had a lot that probably people would turn up their nose a little bit at in America. We had eel a lot. Eel was very popular in the summer because when you eat it, it's supposed to rejuvenate you. You're supposed to get very tired in the summer because it's so hot. And eating the eel is supposed to rejuvenate you and make you feel good. And I didn't know what it was, so after I'd eaten it 3 or 4 times, but it was pretty good. We had tempura a lot too. Tempura is like fried vegetables and seafood that had been dipped in batter and fried, like I said. And we had that when my mother didn't want to cook. My father knew how to cook tempura, so he made it. We had squid quite often too. I had squid about every way you could imagine. We had barbecued squid, we had raw squid, we had tempura squid, all the ways. We had octopus too. One of the most interesting little things we had were these I had anyways. I came in the house one day and there were these candies sitting on the table. I thought, well, these look pretty good. I looked at the label on the bag and it says, nice tuna. Yeah. And not everything that's written on bags in English is translated right. So I thought, well, maybe they just made a mistake. Maybe it's something, because it looked like chocolate candy. So I picked up the bag and it smelled just like cat food. And I put the bag back down, but my host mother walked in the room. She says, oh, you have to try this, you have to try this. Yep, it tasted like cat food. But it was not bad. It tasted like it smelled.
What religion are the people of Japan?
It all depends. A lot of people, though, are a mixture of Shintoism and Buddhism. Because if it's a happy ceremony, you use Shintoism. Like if there's a birth or if there's a wedding, you use Shintoism. Whereas if there's a death, you'd use Buddhism. And you see a lot of temples all over Japan put up for this. And we visited a lot of temples when I was there. And temples are all basically set up the same way. There's a great big building in the center. You walk in. Before you can go to that building, there's like a watering, not a trough, but it's a large container of water, and you have to wash off your hands and wash off your mouth before you can enter. You go up to the temple, and you can't go inside, but it's simply beautiful inside. It's all gold inlaid and beautifully ornate, and there's usually a great big mirror in the center. And there's a coin box outside, and you can throw a coin inside, and then you can ring a bell that's up there. And you're supposed to be calling the spirits, and they'll give you good luck or make your wish come true. And around the sides, there's usually things like there's trees that have little white slips of paper tied to them, and they have these fortunes written on them. You can buy your fortune for 100 yen and see if it'll come true. And there's prayer boards that students use a lot, especially around exam time. And they say, I want to get into this college, I want to pass this exam, and they write it on a prayer board, and they put it on this, it's like just a structure like an easel, and it has little pegs on it, and they tie it on and put it there.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Corin?
I'm trying to think. No, I can't. I think the people of Japan were really very friendly to me. Wherever I went, everyone was very interested in me. Because not only because I was a foreigner or an American, but everybody just seemed to be very nice. Everybody was very interested, and whenever I went to someone's house, they gave me a gift. And it was really very interesting. The people were very nice. They're especially interested, they liked my hair and my eyes because most people in Japan have brown eyes and black straight hair. And they were really amazed, you know, oh, how pretty, and the little girls would like to go up and touch your hair. And
Well, I'd like to thank Meghan DeGolyer for coming here this evening to talk to us about her trip to Japan.
well, I was glad to be here.
Thanks for watching Cable 4. Good night.